mention this meeting is very casual. If there's any questions at any time, please raise your hand. And I have been told that I'm a very soft speaker, so I apologize. So if anybody is having a hard time hearing me, please say, hey. And, I'll try to speak a little louder. Want to mention that we are not experts in parenting. We are not trained psychologists or anything of that nature. We are parents like you. We just have maybe a few more years of making numerous mistakes. No, it's a great journey. Highly encourage it. And I'm going to pass around a few pictures. These are some family vacations. But yeah, just kind of take a look at them. They tell a lot about our family, especially when you get to see this one here. This is one up in Minnesota, Minneapolis, at the theme park in the mall up there. A roller coaster ride. So we'll kind of explain our family. Here's myself, our youngest David, John, and Martha. Myself, I have one hand with a white knuckle on the grips here. I am hanging on for dear life. But my other hand is on David's leg, making sure he doesn't fly out. Because he has both hands in the air, just wanting to have fun. Our oldest is a little bit more cautious. You'll see that he has one hand up in the air, but his other hand, he's kind of hanging on. Then Martha, you can see that she spotted the camera. She's aware of what's going on. And this one here explains one of our family vacations. The goal is to stand on the Continental Divide. That was the whole theme of the family vacation. I kind of encouraged that one, but also the Martha and the boys kind of planned it out. I have developed kind of a hobby. I really enjoy indoor skydiving. So on our family vacations, Martha and the boys would kind of plan where we're going, but I got to plan the route that would take us by an indoor skydiving wind tunnel. So,
and how many did you decide you've been to?
I think we've been to 8 of them. They have them kind of scattered out over the United States. They go from, we've been to North Dakota, down in Texas, Kansas, Chicago has 3 of them, Colorado, up in as far west as Utah. So, I gotta be careful on that one. I could all of a sudden come across as a salesperson for indoor skydiving. I have on my notes here to have a Bible verse. Instead of a Bible verse, I brought this little family devotion that I have, or our family has. It's something that I picked up at Barnes and Noble. Our church has daily prayer devotions. This is something that I would highly recommend as a family. Keeping Christ centered. A devotion book that in evenings, wish we had done more of it, but maybe before going to bed, maybe at the supper table. If possible, have as many suppers together as a family as you can. Don't let that one get away from you. Because sports and activities, as kids get older, will become a deciding factor on what your schedule looks like. It'll get pretty chaotic, but try to keep the family meals together and try to keep a devotion book. That is we found to be so important in our lives. And then Martha and I are right now, we're taking theology classes together. She's working on her master's in theology, I'm working on my master's of divinity. And one of the textbooks I was reading this last week, Built on a Rock, talking about conflict within the church or conflict within the family. And it was kind of discussing that when you have people together, there's gonna be conflict. There's just no getting away from that. But it's how the conflict is not so much resolved, but more how it's reconciled. And when you have Christ as your center, reconciliation is so important. But within this book, brought a smile to my face. I'd like to read a quote here. Children make great recording devices. They observe, remember, and replay. As a father, I am both pleased with and embarrassed by how much my son imitated me. He repeated things he saw me saying and doing, both good and bad. It does not take long as a parent to recognize how our example as adults significantly influences our children. Even today, I hear my adult son using words or phrases he heard from me when he was a child. And that is so true. Martha and I, we watch our John and David. They're age 30 and 27 now, and a lot of the things they do has come from us. And when I listen to them talk, a lot of their voice inflection, it's like, wow, it sounds like a little bit like maybe me. And it's like, so they do pick up on their parents, and I think we're still, my parents have passed away, but I have memories, and I'm still finding myself today in the parenting role. That doesn't go away. Parenting, once you start, it continues. It doesn't stop. And I'm still looking back to some of the things my parents taught me, and I'm sure you're doing the same. And with that, I'd like to take over up here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. My better half, by far, and you'll see that as we go on here. Couldn't do the parenting without him. And he just, yeah, there's so many things. Thank you, Doug. Appreciate it. Introducing your family is a big job. Well, it's not such a big job, but it's a big job to pare it down so that I'm not here talking about my family for, 15, 20 minutes. So I just picked 3 things as I was sitting there thinking about this. The first one is our family action adventure is probably a theme of our family. You notice the pictures. It's pretty obvious that I am the only gal in the pictures, 2 sons and a husband. And so I love action adventure movies, which is a good thing because that's about all we watched when the boys were growing up. I also like Hallmark movies, and my husband, again, my better half, he watches Hallmark movies with me now. I don't know if he likes them, I don't ask, but he watches them with me, so that's really nice. But action adventure is when the 4 of us are together, that's it. Our vacations that Doug talked about highlights that. And they did talk me into a real skydiving vacation too, so I jumped out of an airplane. They bought me a birthday present, so either I didn't use their birthday present or I went, and I'm glad I went. It was really good. Then the second thing that came to mind, I'm sitting in my house, doing this, and we have a very small house, very tiny. And our living room is also our dining room, is also kind of our kitchen. So all living happens right in that area. And Doug and I growing up as a family like that, and the boys grew up like that. So sitting together close just feels right. So even now, I've got a son who's 6'5", somebody who's 6'1", and somebody who's 6 foot. And we all sit in this, living room, dining room area, watching a movie, and their feet are hitting each other, and it just, you would think maybe it's a little crowded, but it's just cozy. So we love to be together. This is something I bought, and I have it in my house. Together is our favorite place to be. So it's a little hard now with the kids being in the empty nest stage. We don't get to see them as often, but it's still, I think, where my heart is, and I think the family. It's a theme of the family. Being together is good. And then the last thing, just in terms of our family in general, our goal for parenting. Doug and I did not purposefully sit down and think about our goal, plan it. You guys all know, parenting is busy. You just get up in the morning and go, and then fall in bed at night. But what we were blessed with was we could inherit the goal from our folks. And the family I grew up in, the family that Doug grew up in, the goal was that their children, and so for us, that our sons will know Jesus as their Lord and Savior for their whole lives. And that is the principal goal that we have. You know, successful, good citizens, all those things are really good too, but in the crunch of time, when you just have to make a snap decision, that's the goal that we raised our kids with. So, and the Bible verse that I think fits with that, Psalm 145 verse 4, one generation shall commend your works to another and shall declare your mighty acts. And when I see parenting in that verse there, I think, oh, it's not so hard. You know, I just tell them about God. I tell them about Jesus, and that's all I have to do. So I missed training one of my sons on good table manners, and I still feel bad about that. So I missed, and got angry when I shouldn't have been angry. But the goal is to tell them about God and tell them about Jesus. And that to me just kind of calms me down and puts me in a better spot. So to that then, I wanted to get into some parenting strategies. And again, the reason for strategies, I think, is because parenting is so busy, and so oftentimes you just need to make the decision: do I discipline, and do I discipline here, or do I teach here, or do I give a hug here? Whew. And having a strategy that makes sense to you and that's easy to come to mind is really, I think, helpful. The strategies can be as different as the people in this room. You could each have a totally different strategy, and I would encourage you to. I'll show you mine, but I do want to tell a story. Sorry, I'm going to tell our pastors. It's not on Doug, but our pastor, a couple pastors ago, had a strategy. He and his wife ended up with 6 kids, and so he would always say that our strategy is, when we had one, it was kind of a 1-on-2, which was pretty easy for defensive kind of stuff. You have 1 kid and 2 parents, so you can handle most.
They were good on sports. You need to.
Yeah, that's right. So sports and
football.
That's what he thought. Now I don't know if his wife also had this strategy, but he was definitely a sports guy. Thank you. And then when you get 2 kids, it's 2-on-2, and that's still pretty good. You can defend most things. 3 kids, it gets to be 2-on-3, and so then you kind of have to move to a zone defense. And then they ended up with 6, and he said when you get to 6 or maybe even 5, what you do is you just watch out for the Hail Marys. And just prevent those, and you're good to go. So his strategy I loved. It doesn't fit with me. I'm not a sports person, but my strategy came from Dr. Dobson's radio program. I don't even know if he's still living, but when I was at that stage, middle school, elementary school, I listened to Christian radio as much as I could. They had programmings then: Chuck Swindoll, James Dobson, David Jeremiah, Focus on the Family, all sorts of things. And I would definitely encourage you to do that. You just need help or input as a parent throughout the day. And so I tried to do that as often as I could. And what he came up with was, one program, it was when my oldest was probably about 5, so it was like, oh, where was this 5 years ago? But he said strategies of parenting, and you've got 4 strategies. He broke it down into age: early childhood, 0 to 5, middle childhood, 6 to 12, so you can see before school kind of elementary years to teenage, and then you got teenagerhood to adulthood at 18, and then 18 and plus is the young adulthood. And he gave, kind of a focus for each of these. So we'll try to, how many here's oldest child is in this category? Okay, how many's oldest child is in this category? Or grandchild? Okay, how about oldest child? Okay. And then anybody besides Doug and I here? Yeah, okay. All right, so, we'll touch base on all of them. And, James Dobson's focus was discipline for 0 to 5, training for 6 to 12, coaching for 13 to 18, and friendship for 18 and beyond. And, obviously, you're gonna get into discipline a little bit with that middle school student, even sometimes the young adult. But generally speaking, this is sort of the flavor of your parenting kind of changes as the child changes. And what I did then was I put names to it because that's helpful for me. So the autocrat, and in politics, you don't want to say I'm an autocrat because that's very, but for, it's very controlling. And we're all democratic here and we like, a democratic political system. But for a child, 0 to 5, they need that control to help them with the discipline. And then the teacher role is that, you're training. So you're teaching. That's a lot of what you do. Then the coaching role as an adolescent, as kids that are in that adolescent stage, and then friendship, and that's what we're in now, and it's beautiful. But it changes, and you still have to do quite a bit of parenting. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. What I would like to do is, as we're going through this, if you have some examples, as we go through the stage, raise your hand and share those, because chances are there's maybe 2 or 3 other people in there that would really benefit from your example of what, seems to work for you, or what you think would work. And then if you have questions too for Doug or I, anytime, go ahead and raise your hand. Okay, so start with this. And what I want to do first is just read what James Dobson said in just 2 sentences here about this, and then go through just some examples. I looked up on the internet, an autocrat, what are the duties of an autocrat? Teacher, what are the duties? Coach, what are the duties? And friend, what are the duties? And for the most part, Google did a really good job of, they could be used in a parenting sort of way. Not all of them, but some of them. So we'll go through that as a discussion. All right, so James Dobson said, early childhood. Dobson emphasized the importance of establishing authority and setting clear boundaries early on. He suggests that parents should be firm but loving leaders, especially during the preschool years, to help children learn respect for authority. So an autocrat, some of the duties, first of all, centralized power. And we found that to be very true. You make the rules, the parent makes the rules. They are not ready to make the rules. They are not ready to decide what goes and what doesn't go. Strict control and supervision, and anybody that's been through that stage, you all have, you're exhausted because you are supervising, all the time, but it's necessary to keep them safe, and then also to keep them understanding that they're not the one making the rules. They're not the ones in charge. Limit individual freedom. So individual freedom. Like a great example would be, they can decide if they want a blue M&M or a green M&M, but you decide if they should have M&Ms before mealtime. And that's, your role as the parent. And then this one, possible force, in the autocratic society, they sometimes use force to cause their, make their citizens do, and that's not good. But in the 0 to 5, oftentimes it was easier for him, but they're running out into the street and they don't stop, and you gotta force them, pick them up, move them to safety. Church was a great example for us. And I wanna say, Doug was better maybe at this early stage than I was. And it was so helpful to have him. Our church scenario, we would sit in our row, and Doug would be in one spot, and I would always sit right next to him, and then the boys would be over here. And if anything was going on over here, Doug would look around and look at them. And they got to the point where they understood, but if they didn't, if they just missed that look, then the next time it happened, or if it continued to happen, he would just get up very lovingly and grab them. And the first time I remember kicking and screaming, but it didn't faze Doug at all, and he carried him out to the cry room. And in the cry room, I don't know how he did it, but he stood and held them the whole time and watched the sermon. So they got the idea, you watch and listen and are attentive. And then he would come back. The other thing that Doug did, and until this presentation, I never thanked him for it, but as I look back, I really am thankful. Sometimes we'd be sitting in our pew, and I would be the one talking to the boys, not, trying to just manage the kids. And he would look at me. It was like, I didn't often like it. I bristled a little bit to it. But oh, so thankful because, and he never had to carry me out kicking and screaming, so that was good. That would have been a challenge, but he would have done it lovingly. So, any thoughts on things? Oh, also the last one. This was where the analogy kind of breaks down. Propaganda is a part of the autocratic political system, and that's never right for kids. I love what Jan and Steve Bernstein Bears said, you never tell a child a lie, but you don't always tell them the whole truth. So their books are based on the truth, but partial truths. So, but it reminded me of the power of distraction at this stage, and a parent who masters that, and I never was super good at it, but I have nieces and nephews that are phenomenal at it. A nephew that, the child is set on their way and wants their thing. He can come up and he has that face and he says something funny and they're laughing, and they're totally just dropping what their agenda was. So that power of distraction, don't ever, as you that are beyond this stage, you're gonna be grandparenting someday, and that's a great thing to teach your kids. Okay, any thoughts on that? First one. Okay, we're beyond that for you guys. Let's go to the second one, that middle stage, 6 to 12, and what James Dobson said about it. This stage involves training children in responsibility and character development. Dobson encourages parents to distinguish between childish irresponsibility and willful defiance, responding appropriately to each. And this also bleeds into, or is probably a lot where the middle school child is at. And it's so, as a teacher, and Katie I'm sure knows this too, that you can have disruptions in the classroom. And as a teacher, I always take the student out if I'm not sure. Sometimes directly, that's just defiant. They are just not being respectful, not loving their fellow student, and you can tell it's an issue of the heart. Sometimes you can't. They're doing this thing you don't know. So I always take them out and talk to them and say, what's up? Or what's going on? And if it is more just something that is not a hard issue, then they'll say, well, the person behind me is clicking their pen and I can't concentrate. And so that is then something where, it's a very legitimate thing. So help train them a little bit on, when that happens, maybe just raise your hand and let me know, or if that feels uncomfortable, let them know, or after class, come and tell me, and so you're training them, you're teaching them. If it is a hard issue, and they say, what? What was it? I didn't do anything. Then you start talking respect. And for a younger child, that might be discipline then at that point. Take away privileges, whatever your family discipline structure is. So differentiating between those hard issues and just a training issue. They just need to learn how to handle this situation. And it's hard. It's hard to figure out sometimes. Okay. So, what are the duties then of the teacher? Planning and preparing. engaging in effective learning. Ha. And you are not always the one that has to do the teaching at this stage. You know, you enlist us here at Valley and coaches and activity directors and all, but you still need to do the planning. And Dobson would say that at this stage, not letting them necessarily make all of their decisions, like what are they going to do, what's their schedule going to look like. You need to plan like a coach does. He plans practices, and at this stage they still need that help with planning and can't really make their own decisions on that. They'll have input, but that's your privilege, I guess. Then instruction and delivery. Here, having things that, you know, your instruction is discussion a lot of times as a parent, but also activities, vacations, projects. One of my sons just loved projects. And making sure that they're positive kind of activities for instruction. Again, I miss the whole table manners thing. And I think about it every time he's home. So anyway, thinking about what activities would be fun to do. And so now as a grandparent, I'm a little bit more prepared for something fun on table manners. Assessment is giving constructive feedback and then modifying instruction, and that's super important. I got two very different sons. And so one is all about just tell me what I have to do, and you know, he'll do it. And he can have a 20-step process and follow it all the way through. The other one is wants to be shown how to do it. He wants to get in and do it as he's learning. And so my bend is this, and so I always had to slow myself down and, you know, do more tactile stuff with the other one. And that was hard. It was hard for me sometimes. The thing I remember is when we were learning how to throw a baseball, and my oldest son, or my one son, I shouldn't say which, just could throw the baseball back and forth for 45 minutes, you know, and just practice each time. That was great. My other son, he started, and he wanted to get creative. After about 2 or 3 throws, then he would throw it behind his back like this, and you know, it would go off this way, and I would get frustrated, and no, this is how you do it. You know, instead of just going with it and having fun with it. So, you know, I learned a little bit to just stop and breathe and, you know, kind of redirect, but I didn't always do a good job of that by any means. And then classroom management is a big teacher thing, and that's where, you know, a lot of the discipline in our family was on Doug's shoulders, and he did a beautiful job of it. But in the training situation where you're just teaching them day to day and they're just around and all, then the leadership falls on mom's shoulders. And moms have to be as much leaders as dads do in this stage of things. All right. Then the next, any thoughts on that? Ideas? Then the next one is the coaching, 13 to 18 years. And so this is, I kind of think, where the launching and thinking about where they're going to go starts out. Dr. Dobson says, okay, Dobson advises parents to transition from a more direct approach to one of coaching, guiding teenagers as they navigate independence and make their own choices. So I looked up what a coach does, and they also plan practices. And so I remember at that stage just planning their schedules. Okay, they had 3 events and he had 3 events. Oh, they couldn't do 3 events, they had to do 2, which one do we cut out? You know, and being the person that does that, not letting them, you know, it was always hard because they wanted to do this many or they didn't want to do any at all. And so planning that process was a big challenge. It took a lot of time, and then getting them there and all of that. Because at this stage, you're not doing all of the teaching, you know, there are other activities. And you'll find what's right for your family. Sometimes we didn't have the boys own a car until they actually could pay for it themselves out of college. We did not have the boys do a job except summer jobs because their job was school. And that's not right for every family by any means, but for us, that was the only way to balance because they wanted to do sports and they wanted to do all sorts of things. So sometimes some really tough decisions have to be made, and they always felt like we weren't fair. They never had the car. That's okay. I told them to go talk to Lake. And then monitoring strengths and weaknesses is a coach's job. What they should spend their time doing. And I wish I had done better at that. Because you're just so busy taking care of the everyday, but looking at what are their strengths. And so I just had a mom talking to me the other day that she had to make a choice. Her daughter did about a class that she was going to take for a sporting event that she was going to do. And her mom said, I told her that this class was the right thing for her to do because this, and this, and this. And it was the right thing for her to do because mom said so. And so I think she wasn't totally thrilled with it, but I think the daughter was going to go with it because mom was confident in her decision. And sometimes I made bad decisions on that, and you learn, but looking at their strengths and weaknesses, because you're the one who knows them best. And you kind of have an idea of where the Lord might be leading them. And so for boys, a lot of computer games and things like that, we always had to set a limit, and they were never popular. But, that's not the direction that you should be spending your time. That's not your strengths. You should go here and do this. Okay, and then encourage and motivate. And motivation, you guys all know, it's intrinsic and extrinsic. Motivation internally or motivation by outward stuff. And I had two completely different sons. One, intrinsic motivation was achievement, mastering the goal. The other one was personal growth and learning new things. About as far apart as you could get. And then the extrinsic, one was money, rewards. The other one was social recognition and praise. So I didn't figure that out until a little bit later. But if you think about what motivates my child, that's probably a good thing. The sooner you get an idea on that. Wish I had done that a little bit sooner. So, any thoughts on that, Doug? Any thoughts?
No, just want to emphasize in that time period, actually in all of them, your children, they're going to be closely watching you. And they will take on during the time when the boys were growing up, our household, Martha was working on her master's for teaching at that time. She was doing a lot of studying, and so when it came time for the boys to do their homework, they saw what their mom was doing, and I was not doing any TV, maybe a book or something like that. It was kind of, I think my role is to be quiet and let everybody study at that time period. Kind of what I was reading earlier, this whole thing, they're watching you. And for us, studying was a big thing at that time period. And they developed study habits from watching their mom.
And on the other end, and this is what I noticed, is Doug took piano lessons actually as an adult, and so he would play the piano. And so both their boys are very musical, and that I think is all they saw Dad doing music and learning how. And
when it came time for them to take piano lessons, they did not question whether they were going to be doing it or not. I had done it, so it's kind of they were going to do it. I think you can do the same with like swimming lessons. Don't force your kids to learn how to swim unless you've done swimming lessons yourself. Although I'm not sure that's fair to say. My mom forced me to learn how to swim and she couldn't swim a stroke.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good thing for us to just remind you guys too. We have ideas and we're saying things, but it's for our family. All of this stuff you got to take and make it your own. Because every class I have here at school is completely different. I don't start out with the rules of the class right up front. I get to know the students first and then, establish the rules, because some of this stuff isn't gonna be important to you at all. And then there's stuff that we didn't even touch base on, and that's gonna be, your key things, so, yeah.
I do want to add, as an adult, she did go back she did go and take swimming lessons, so it was.
Mom is a sweetheart. Okay, so that was the big one for you guys, where a lot of you guys are at. Oh, and, the whole health and safety at this age too. Our coach, Mr. Tanny, is wonderful. He tells the kids, you shouldn't drink pop, you shouldn't eat candy, you shouldn't eat cookies during track season. And they don't. They're amazing. He is amazing. And as a parent too, the safety things and the health things. Set it out. I don't think you can manage it and monitor it, but you set the expectations. Say, this is what, we just don't do that, we don't do that. And they don't get it at home, and I know some of the kids with Mr. Tanny do drink pop and all, but he sets that expectation. And then riding with friends and things like that, or staying out late at night and all, just from the health standpoint, setting some really just rules. They, again, if they love you all the time, you're probably not doing everything right, because there's a lot of times where, they don't like you very much. They always love you, but they don't like you very much, and that's okay. Especially at the junior high, middle school stage. They start really appreciating you when they go off to college and things like that. All right, and then the last one is friendship, and then I'll open it up to questions. So the adulthood, what Dobson said about that is, as children transition into adulthood, the focus shifts to friendship and continued support, allowing them to make their own decisions while still offering guidance. And sometimes people get into this at high school, and it's really better when the child, is 18 and older. The law says they're an adult, maybe moved out of the house and all. So you don't, I think, want to shift into this too soon while they're under your roof and they're still in high school. The coaching still is a good philosophy, at least that's what we found. So trust and loyalty is really important, and these, I'm still figuring these out. So Doug, if you have any, and one of the things that I do, and it's not good, is my adult sons tell me something that's really cool, maybe an achievement or something, and so I tell the family, because it's cool. And then it gets back to them that mom told that, and they're embarrassed. And so I've had the discussion. They've told me several times, don't tell everything that I tell you. So, and that deals with that trust. So I'm still learning that one. Support and presence. So being present, even if you can't be present, figure out ways to do it, virtual games and things like that. Celebrate their achievements. They're off on their own now, and nobody's telling them, hey, great job. Oh, you got a promotion at work. Way to go. They tell their friends, and their friends tease them probably. Oh yeah, you work too much. But mom and dad can always be, oh, that's so great, and just maybe even over the top a little bit. But this is support. That support is really important. And I have listen by each of these, and that's another bugaboo of mine, is just listening. I want to talk, and for this age group, especially sons, listening is so important. The other thing that I'm finding now too is the honesty is so important. They tell me something that has nuances, but has a very clear right and wrong, and in the past I might have thought, well, they're not ready for the whole story yet. But now it's really important when a topic comes up that I tell them the truth, as far as I see it. And sometimes I'm not right, but rather than try to soften it or just skip over it. So being really honest with kids this age, I think, is part of what Hugo said friendship is all about. And then respect them, respect their decisions. When they say they decided something, and this is something I've learned just recently, is I don't respond to it, especially if I'm negative. I made this decision, Mom. I'm thinking, I just listen and say, oh, interesting. And then I hang up the phone after we're done, and I pray about it, and I let a night go before I say anything one way or the other. I want to try to be supportive, and a lot of times their decision in their perspective makes sense, and that would not have been my first response. My first response would have been, oh, but are you looking at this and this and this? So trusting them to make good decisions. And then listen. And then listen and listen. And that's all I have for that. All right, we just have a couple of minutes left. Questions that you guys have? For Doug?
I agree. The listening one is the hardest one for me. Get into a conversation and they tell me what they're doing and they just want me to listen, but I start dropping back into the coaching, the teaching, and the discipline area, and that's not what they've called to talk to me about. They want somebody to listen. And that's hard. But they let me know too. If I drop down in one of those other territories, no, Dad. No, I have no other.
Do you want to just?
Yes. I get to do the closing. And as at the beginning, I mentioned one of these books is really important. I think for a family to have one of these, it's our boys. We've raised them as Christ as the center, and there'll be times when they'll say, "Oh, we're ready to go to bed." So it's important, and so I guess evening devotion doesn't need to be a long one. But it's important to close, we try to close the day with Christ. So in closing our meeting, I just picked this up, turn to today's date. Yep. It's from Matthew 5:7. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Mercy is to personally care about another's distress and to show understanding for the circumstances of others. In the parable Jesus tells in Luke, he describes three types of people: takers, hoarders, and givers. The highwaymen are takers. Their philosophy is, everything that is yours is mine, I'll take it. They rob the innocent traveler and walk away from the scene. These people are not necessarily your enemies. Sometimes they are even your friends who take everything that they can from you and then leave you to your fate. Takers are only interested in what they can obtain for their own selfish purposes. They have yet to understand what mercy is all about. Our prayer is, Lord Jesus, give me a caring heart such as you had for sinners, prostitutes, and outcasts, so that I can do your work in this world. Amen. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you all for joining us too. We appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you both for speaking. It was really wonderful hearing about all the different roles of parent, one position, but many objectives. If I recall correctly, you have another passing period here. Bathrooms are straight down that way, and then I believe you're back in the NPR room for another session. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
Coffee must have hit.